Okay, this week's Sky Cricket podcast comes to you from Manchester, where I am. I'm at Old Trafford, actually, at the hotel next to the ground. Old Trafford, where Nasser averaged 8 in first-class cricket. And Nass, you're in Chelmsford, as ever. How are you?
I'm decent, actually. I'm a bit stiff because I went from a long walk with Graham Gooch yesterday, all the way from Leighton to Ilford. So Essex are commemorating the fact that this week they will go equal, I think, with Leighton as the number of first-class games played at Chelmsford. So a bit of history created at the home of cricket, Chelmsford, this weekend. I saw your old opening partner, Graham Gooch. He was in fine form.
Great man, great player. Rob Key is with us this week. Delighted to say that Rob, whose portrait probably hangs in every county dressing room now, against which all the medium pacers are throwing darts. Rob Kookaburra Key, welcome. How are you?
I'm very well. Yeah, that's going to end up sticking, isn't it? I think there is a few I've had. Do you know who texted me yesterday was Mark Elam? Mark Elam just texting me a load of abuse and having a go at me about thanks a lot, Keith, and all of this stuff. I said, you were 80 mile an hour, you're fine.
Now, I should start by asking you, are you a man of Kent or a Kentish man, first of all? I'm not sure.
Do you know, I got asked this the other day. I got asked this the other day at a dinner I was at in Maidstone Way. And I have no idea. I can't remember which is always above.
That's the
the
dividing line, isn't it? Whichever side of Maidstone you are. I wanted to start with Ken because obviously the sad news about Derek Underwood this week, one of England's great spinners, one of England's great cricketers, really. Somebody who you'll have probably known a little bit. He finished at Kent in 1987, so not that long before you started playing, really.
Yeah, Deadly was sort of on the cricket committee, sort of back in the days. They don't necessarily have them anymore, but when counties had cricket committees that would report into the general committee, Deadly was sort of always one of the cricket voices on that, which was really good because, you have a few people that might be retired from business or whatever, but then you always need cricket people on these things to sort of keep you honest. And I never minded as a captain, if I was being challenged on those things, because if you couldn't stand up by what you were saying, then you needed to think again. And Deadly was always, he was before my time. I never really sort of saw him play, but you knew of him. But he was always very softly spoken and incredibly kind. And I always think it's such an underrated thing these days, like you talk about great players and all of that, which he was, but he had time for everyone and he never sort of belittled you because he was so much better than us, like we were county players and he was an England legend, and he never you never felt like he patronised you or anything like that. He was just one of the Kent legends, but one of the sort of Kent's great men, I think, as well. And it's really sad because he had quite a long illness. I hadn't seen him for a while, but I just remember him just always sort of being there for you, being friendly, and almost sort of, when you're going through a tough time, as we often were at Kent, he was a shoulder to cry on a little bit, which is such a great trait.
And part of a great Kent team, really. I suppose the last time that Kent were a real force in English cricket, they won a lot of titles. I think he won 3 championships, and obviously that Kent side of the early 70s that won a lot of one-day trophies. When you were growing up, was that a side that you watched as a kid or read about as a kid or not?
No, I tell you what it was. It was a team that when you then became a Kent player, and I started
compared to.
Yeah, and every picture in the, you had the Cat players' dining room and stuff like that, where all the pictures of former Cat players were there, all of that. And it was always like the 70s. And it got to a point, actually, I think, before I became captain, where people were like, we have to stop talking about the 70s and we need to sort of park that era because we need to sort of make our own history. Like teams do that all the time. Half the time you want to sort of remember the past and the other time you want to forget it. But I remember sitting next to Alan Knott at a dinner. And Notty, it was like always Knott and Underwood, wasn't it? And Notty just sort of turned around and he said he wasn't a spinner, he was a cutter. He was a cutter who just fired it in, and it just was really accurate. And, and Deadly always said that he loved Notty so much. He used to travel with him everywhere before like the days of the M25, and he'd always have to drive up, and they would stop at the same cafe in London when they're going up north, because Notty and Notty like wouldn't look to his left to talk to you because he didn't want to get a stiff neck and all of that. But Deadly always said, I did that because he was worth so many wickets to me. So I put up with everything that he did just because he was such a good keeper. And that partnership is probably the most famous one I think Kent will ever have, no matter what they do.
When you became a pundit, you were quick to slam Super Kent where every time they posted. How's Super Kent going at the moment? I saw they were hanging on for a draw against Essex the other day. Do you go and watch them? Do you keep up with them? How are they going?
I popped in for the first game. There was a lot of washed out games, but that was when Super Kent were like bottom of the division or something, and they kept getting beat and tweeting like hashtag Super Kent. That was when we were doing the podcast. So there wasn't much super about them, but Super Daniel Bell Drummond is getting lots of runs, and Super Zach Crawley's coming back in this week, I think. So it may well be Super Kent yet again.
I mean, it's a way of getting into our first topic, really, which is obviously the Kookaburra and the start of the county season, because Underwood was a man of his time. He was a great bowler in all conditions. He got, in 76 in India, he took more wickets than the India spinners in that series. He took 100 wickets in the championship after we moved away from uncovered pitches. But he's remembered for being a bowler who destroyed teams on uncovered pitches, which is obviously back in the day. But times when, pitches were very helpful for bowlers. Now, what we've seen at the start of the season, this great, wonderful experiment of yours with the Kookaburra first two rounds of the championship, is an absolute run fest. So first of all, you tried it for 2 rounds of the championship last year. You've expanded that to 4 rounds this year. First of all, just tell people who may not know, what the differences are between the Kookaburra and the Dukes, and why you wanted to expand this experiment to use an Australian ball in English conditions.
Yeah, I suppose it depends. My view is that, the better the conditions, and I suppose for batting in some way, the more you find out about your bowlers. And bowlers are so important to winning you games, isn't it, really? Your batsmen set up the games, and the bowlers are the ones that win it. And whatever you reward in life grows, I think. And over the last sort of 10, 15 years, we've had conditions for a number of different reasons. I don't think that counties try and produce poor wickets or wickets that seem more than not. But the Duke's ball in particular has really suited medium pacers, especially bowlers under 80 miles an hour. These guys have run right. My good mate Darren Stevens, who I actually started bowling, he was just a batter, and I sort of gave him the ball and he went on from there. But it's really rewarded that type of bowler, which is so far removed from what we need in Test cricket and actually one-day cricket as well, because I also believe that for us to have a great era of English cricket, which you want to do, which everyone in these sorts of jobs, when you guys were captain, that's what you want to do, really. It's about the bowlers and being able to produce, and it's not about 95 mile an hour, but it's clear that, the best teams, it's sort of 85 miles an hour plus. And in our domestic system, that's not a necessity, really. So when you're setting up a team as a county coach, you try and produce players to what the environment requires. And the Kookaburra ball just does less of that. It doesn't swing as much. It doesn't seam as much, and it doesn't continue to seam as much. That's the point, I think. The Duke's ball will swing and nip pretty much for the whole game if you look after it well enough. And I wanted something that would replicate international conditions more. And a little bit, I suppose it depends on how you see the world. I went to what, I watch a lot of county cricket. I played all this era I've played through almost. I've seen the good and the bad of it. I've seen the 2005 era when we were on flat wickets and you had to really earn your corner as a bowler, and I've then seen it when it's changed a little bit for whatever reason. And for me, there's no doubt that, when the conditions are better for batting, what happens is your batsmen learn to get trust of the ball, and you need to have something special. You need a bit of extra pace. You need a bit of mystery spin, and we've seen in this first couple of weeks, albeit the pitches were slow because of the time of year, but you've had to have either pace or you've had to have spin, and it's not about turning pitches, it's about volume for spinners. So someone like Bashir bowling 20 plus overs, I saw a fantastic bit of play at the Oval. I saw two really good batsmen in Burns and Sibley batting. You had Craig Overton at one end and you had Bashir bowling at the other. And Bashir was holding an end up at less than 2 and over, or around 2 and over. And Overton was sort of like length, bouncer, length, bouncer. And they were ducking and having to play. And that, to me, is really compelling cricket. Much more so than when I went to Kent 3 or 4 years ago. It always seemed like, it's unfortunate I was at Kent because I was digging them out. But I saw like keeper up to the stumps for 75% of that game. Now, I believe you watch professional sport, whatever it is, because you watch people do what you can't do. You watch the elite perform a skill that you go, I couldn't play against that. And I'm rambling on, as you guys know. Like my first memory of county cricket was watching Kent Essex when I was like having a net there when I was 13, and Nasser was batting Graham Gooch, who you're talking about soon. It was Headley and McCaig running into bowl. And I was like, oh, how on earth are you going to play that? The skill level from like Gooch, McCaig and Headley was so high, that actually it made you think, like this is what professional sport is all about. Now, there's times when I was at Kent at pre-season and I'm watching it thinking, Jesus, like a club cricketer would think I could play this. And that's not what it's meant to be about for me. So, has that made any sense? I've sort of waffled for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good answer you've given there. We know the reasons, but it hasn't gone down well. We had Alec on, as director of cricket at Surrey. He said it was nonsense. It hasn't gone down that well with players, with fans, with spectators. Are you stung by the criticism? Do you take it on board? The fact that before this season, people say, playing cricket in April with a Duke's ball, spinners don't bowl, nibbling dobbers get wickets. So you've tried to change it, and now you're getting criticism for the fact that it's a bit boring and it's a bit dull. But batters are getting big runs, spinners are bowling more. 3 leg spinners have got fifers in Harrison, Steele and Critchley. So it is changing, but you feel you can't win either way? Would you have done anything differently?
No, I think that if I sort of, and this, I don't mean this to sound sort of trite or anything, but if I listen to criticism from everyone all the time, especially on social media, I'd never do anything. I tell you, and I listen to you guys because Stewie texted me and said I've given you a serve on Nasser and Athers podcast, or Athers and Nasser, whoever's the more important, I don't know. But what I sort of, how it worked, because. And this happened like from the high performance review when I spent sort of the first 6 months of this job going round and round and trying to come up with all these ideas. And what we did, I got all the directors of cricket together in London, actually. And I said, right, we're talking about a few things. And I never want to sound like we're preaching. I said, I believe in this Kookaburra ball trial. I'll show you all the stats about what's happened, in the 2 games we've used it and the games either side. Which were very clear that spin was more in it, whether it was leg spin or left arm spin, it didn't matter, it's better for spin. And I said, but I don't care. Like, if you guys, this is your game, if you guys want to use it, and you agree, we'll have a vote and we'll get round and we'll use it. And Stewie was sort of anti it. I think it's rubbish. And I said, well, why? He said, well, I just think, like integrity of the competition, all this stuff, And we sort of went around, so we did all of our stuff. And what I did, I went to the left of Stewie first and just sort of went, right, let's vote for this. And I went round to every single director of cricket, bar Warwickshire and Derby, who weren't there. And every single one of them said, it sounds like a good thing. Let's do it for 50. Yeah, we want it for 50% of the time. And then when I got to Stewie, I just went, well, we've got a majority now. Maybe you don't need your vote anymore.
That is sneaky.
And he just thought his reply wasn't that kind.
I got a couple of questions for you. One is about the variety that the game offers. That you look at it from particularly an international perspective at the moment, the Test cricket. And we all understand that you want the best possible Test match team, and you want to try and create the conditions to get there. But also, for my mind, one of the beauties of the game is the variety of conditions that you will get. You'll go to India and expect to get, turning pitches. You'll go to Australia and get bouncy pitches. historically, English cricket has had its USP, if you want to use that crazy term, it has been, swing and seam bowling in often difficult conditions for batsmen that tests a particular element of the game. And I suppose the danger is that if you just use kookaburras all the time, and in particular on English pitches in early season, you'll end up getting some quite uniform conditions. And England will lose a little bit of what makes it stand out as slightly different around the world. I mean, is that a fair argument to throw back at you?
Yeah, everything. They're all fair arguments to throw back. They're not wrong necessarily. I mean, my view is a little bit like we sort of think, home conditions, we dominate, all of that type of stuff, which a lot of teams do at the moment. But the truth is, that England have been a middling test team for 40 plus years. We have never dominated. I want us to really go out there and be the best team in the world, and have a really good era. And it's trying to find ways of doing that, and I also believe that, I do think that in this job, you can get trapped in this world of like, how do you change the whole structure of county cricket? How do we change the schedule? All of that, which of course, in the perfect world, you wouldn't have this. Even, even from a spectacle, like as I said earlier, I think it's great watching high skill bowlers. It's not just about pace, because what Sam Cooke did, I watched him against Notts, I think it was. I thought this is pure skill, like a bit like this Philander when he plays. So you need that varied attack, but you need the bar to be raised higher really with it. So I just think that I'm not concerned about the lack of variation. I think you'll always get different conditions in England. It will just help us create better cricketers. I'll ask you two a question. Like if you're coach of a county team like Lancashire now and Essex, you're both the coaches, and you think, right, okay, half the summer in the championship, we're going to be using this Kookaburra ball. All right, so you're at the start, and you've now got to start building a squad and a team for 50% of the games with the Kookaburra ball. Tell me, what type of cricketers are you looking for? Are you going to scour the country? Are you going to set up youth programs for? What type of cricketers are you looking for?
I mean, it's an obvious question. You've already answered it with your first answer. You need, extra pace, and you need a bit of wrist spin. But my only issue with you, Rob, and it will come on to India and we'll come on to the way the test side has been playing or whatever. You said there, in the last 40 years, we've been a middling test match side. But the times that we have been successful, 2005, and you look at that bowling attack, it is a varied bowling attack. You go to 2010, 2011, winning in Australia. Some of what you're doing is to try and win an Ashes down under. Some of it. You shouldn't base your whole cricketing summer on 5 test matches every, 4 years or 2 years or whatever it might be. But that attack had Anderson and Broad. It had Finn and Tremlett. It had Swan. It had the control and skill of Bresnan. It had a batting lineup of Cook and Trott, backed up by Peterson, who'd play the attacking innings. What I confuse, and I'm putting a lot of things together here. It seems to me that your way of thinking is that everyone has to bowl quick, everyone has to play shots. A varied batting lineup, a varied bowling attack, that's what brings you success. And I see it in the test side. I see everyone has to, when I asked Ben Stokes the question, would Michael Atherton and Alistair Cook get into your side? He says no. That for me, I know he's trying to answer the question so that players listen as to how he wants his team to play. But you need different styles of players, different types of batters, different types of bowlers. So it does worry me that the only way of getting into your side is by playing shots. If you don't play shots, you don't get in. The only way of getting in the side is if you bowl quick. You can be very skillful. Glenn McGrath, the greatest bowler ever with a Kookaburra ball, bowled at 80-odd mile an hour. So I've rambled on there, but I do think that a variety in your attack, a variety in your batters is what wins you games and what makes you successful. And that's what I'd be looking for if I was, God forbid, in charge of Essex or England cricket.
Yeah, but I don't know how. I don't think our sort of USP is that you have to play shots. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think, and at times we've not, as a group, and there's players often sort of talking in interview, and they get caught between like trying to sound positive and confident and actually what the reality might be. So take Ben Duckett, for example. So I get that, but that's not what we're about. So when I speak to people, it's not about, I feel like a broken record sometimes. I've argued this with you for years. It's not about playing shots and being a slogger. Joe Root, like Zach Crawley, when he played against South Africa and he got 30 off 100 balls, it's a mindset more than anything else. It's not a tactic. But you have to be able to do both. You have to be able to put bowlers under pressure, as Cook did when he could cut and you bowled a fraction short, he'd pull you. Same with Ath, like these guys weren't like blocking the life out of it all the time. If you bowled badly to them, they would put you away, and that's the key to what you need. So that's the first one on that. That 2005 attack, what did it all have? It had three, and this is the deal. It's not all about having the same bowler. And it's not about 95 mile an hour. It's almost like you didn't listen to the Sam Cook stuff that I said, who's around 80 mile an hour. You sort of position it to try and win an argument. The point is, if you're not quick, you have to have huge amounts of skill, and I get that, or it might be release point, whatever it is you want, but you have to be able to do it on conditions where it's not swinging and seaming. The 2005 attack, I think, for that period in 2004, 2005, when I played a little bit, it wasn't because I played they were good, but, like they were as good attack as England's ever had. That 2005 Australian team was a proper team. And I felt like we went to South Africa and we had, Harmison, high, quick, bounce, Freddie, slightly different, his angle, good pace, Simon Jones, skiddy, reverse swing. And then you had Hoggy as well, who swung it at a different pace. So, but it was three guys who were quicker and one guy who did that bit. And I think that's almost, sometimes I think we haven't been varied, where we've gone sort of like three medium pacers and one quick guy. So I agree with you entirely, and it's not just about us being a one-trick pony team, like a one-dimensional team. I couldn't stand that, really. It's about how you think. Your brain just works better. We've had this exact argument before. If you actually think positively. If every time you can block every ball if you want, as long as the next time you face, you're looking to score. And it's a mindset, and that's what you want. And you want the most talented players. That's what international cricket is about. It's about getting the most talented players and creating an environment where they can succeed. That's pretty much what we want to do. And the same thing, like Jimmy and Stuart Broad, they both got in pretty quickly. They hadn't played a lot of cricket. Jimmy played at Old Trafford, which is probably the best wicket in the country. Where actually it does get flat, and Lancashire probably haven't won the championship as much because they play on such a good wicket, right? And it's the same thing in India. Like India have always played on flatter pitches. Why is it that India have become a real force? And you go IPL and all of this stuff, whatever. But the reality is that India now are starting to dominate or starting to really perform on the world stage because they've got some bowlers that can do it. Bumrah, Shami, people like that, 85 mile an hour plus. So I don't just want quick bowlers. I don't want the same attack all the time. I want that varied attack, but I don't think there's anything wrong with getting people. We've not been looking for it as a country because the environment hasn't made it a necessity. So we've been able to get away with sort of running up and dobbing it on a length, and the ball just does the rest. And that actually is detrimental for batsmen, bowlers, spinners, everyone in the game, bar the medium pacer. And that's a little bit my view with it.
Two final questions. I should move on, I think, but I've got two final questions on this topic for you before we do. Your captain hates draws. He hates draws. You ask him about a test match, how do you feel about a draw? He doesn't even like the word. We've seen one result in the opening two rounds of the championship. There's been a bit of bad weather around as well, but there's been a lot of boring draws. What does he think about it? First of all, that's my first question. And secondly, what are you using in the second 11 championship? Because, if you're talking about trying to almost overhaul an environment, surely it's at the level below when young players are coming through from under 19 11, second 11 and into first class cricket. That's where, you want to be making the changes initially.
Yeah, and we spoke about that a little bit, and we sort of felt that it didn't have as much of an impact. Like things have been trialled in second team cricket, but they play in very different conditions, often club grounds. It's not the same as when we were starting out, where we had an entire second team program. Do you remember? Like it was, we mirrored almost what the first team were doing. And I had a great, you play 18, 19, 20 second team 3-day games, and you learn such a good trade, but it doesn't quite work like that. It's felt if you want to have the impact, then you do it. You just do it straight away. Then one of the complications with this trial is that you have to have it when every team's playing. You couldn't have like one team, because you have teams that miss around, and if they miss around, that's really unfair, because it's different. You need it to be the same for everyone. I haven't spoken to Stokesy about it, but I'm also like, I don't like people sort of say, have you messaged county cricket for how you want them to play? And it's like, no, I want them to decide on how they want to do things, to be honest. I don't care if people want to go out there and, play really aggressively or not. I like people to have the options in life. If people will enjoy what we're doing and they think it's a good way to do it, take it on board. It's pretty clear what we need, without going over that mantra about what you want in that. And like we tried to change, I'm sort of, again, like I don't like tweaks. I think if you're going to change something, be brave and change it. Because if it doesn't work, you can always go back. It's not like we catastrophize every decision where it's like, if we do that, it's the end of the world. No, not really. You can always go back, and generally it's like middling, isn't it, in the way that it goes. And we wanted to change the point scoring system. I almost wanted to go like 1 point for a draw, 3 points for a win. If you got 400 with a win, 4 points, all of that. But at the ECB, they didn't like that really. So then I'm like, well, I don't, like either you change something or you don't, just leave it as it is. And the DOCs, when we met with them, they wanted to go back to the more points for a draw. I've got no issue with that. It's their game. I'm not playing county cricket anymore. It's not for me in this role to tell them what they've got to do. It's for us to try and drive the game forward as best we can.
Let's move on from the Kookaburra ball to, we've not had a chance to speak to you about India and how you felt that test series. Talk to us as a pundit, not as what's your title, director of men's cricket. Go back 3 years and you're doing a podcast and you're asked the question, how did England do in India? As an honest appraisal, as a pundit, what would you have said?
I think that we missed out on so many opportunities, to be honest. I was never a punchy pundit, was I? So I'm not going to go for the sort of soundbitey clickbait things and stuff like that. I thought we were so close. We felt that if they played us on the same pitches, the Hartleys, that gave us our best chance. In fact, they play on the real dirty turners. We were really looking forward to that, because we felt, like that's going to be where someone gets an 80. And that's going to be a game-changing one. As it happened, it was Ollie Pope getting a brilliant 190, and then Hartley. Everything that we'd sort of thought about came through. And then India, to be fair to them, went back to the flatter pitches where Bumrah. I mean, that bloke's a genius. Like Bumrah was so good in that. But I thought that you cannot afford to let opportunities go. And sometimes like the toss is a big thing. So you lose the toss, you're up against it a little bit. But we had them 3 down and then we let them off the hook. We had them 170 behind with 7 wickets left, and we couldn't break that partnership where Kuldeep Yadav batted for 120 odd balls. Then that goes into it 2-2. So I felt that we showed, we competed, but when it really mattered, then we just let them off the hook. And then in the end, a 4-1 result looks like a bit more of a drubbing than what it was. But, I generally am, we started that series. We had Jack Leach as probably the spinner in England. We've now got 3 or 4 options who I sometimes think there's a lack of optimism in this country in everything, not just cricket. We're always, everything's horrendous, Whereas I'm like, okay, right, that Bashir, how good could he be? And Hartley, you got Leachy coming back, stuff like that. So in that regard, we're in a better place. And it's a chance now we're 2 years into it. It's like, okay, how do we need to evolve? How do we need to get better? And they're the things that we're sort of, Brendan, myself, Luke Wright, Stokesy were all sort of, right, okay, how do we trade on from here?
How hands-on are you in that regard? You're talking there about, there's a bit of chat about maybe a slight recalibration of Bazball. I know you hate that term, but just looking at how the team played, and maybe sometimes they go slightly too far, and then the pendulum always swings in life, whatever you're talking about. But in your role right now, how hands-on are you with the Stokes McCullum project? Do you just kind of let them get on with it? Or is there a point where you kind of, at the end of the series, you're 2 years into it, you're halfway through your project, as it were, do you actually sit down and in detail talk about certain scenarios and where things went right, where things went wrong? Or are you very much hands-off and say, it's your team, just get on with it?
No, I suppose because every job, I think, finishes when the person leaves it, so the way that Gilo did this job, the way that Straussy did it, it's always different, every captain's different, stuff like that. And I suppose when I came in, you just sort of, you're evolving with it, or you're trying to adapt and stuff. And so my role in the selection side of things, I think, and I'm that person outside of the dressing room, which I think is important. The same with Luke Wright. There's a reason why I don't sort of position Luke Wright in the camp all the time, because I think it's really important that we're able to give a perspective from outside the dressing room, because you know what it's like. You have relationships with players and people, and you're in a bubble, and so I very much think, they might think that I'm a complete pain in the backside, but generally, myself, Baz, and Stokesy, we sort of talk about everything. The 11, the team on the day, and the way that they play, like that. We had the vision at the start for what I wanted with the style of play, which Baz is completely aligned to, and Stokesy and stuff. And of course, it keeps evolving. Like, they don't like losing. Like this thing that I know that we talk, but they talk about, the players sometimes talk about, we're about entertainment, all that. But that's like they're the tricks that Brendan and Ben use to try and create an environment where you can succeed. Sometimes I think if you explain the magic, it sort of doesn't work, anyway. So I suppose, I wouldn't say I'm hands off, but, I don't like sort of talking up what I do or don't do, but yeah, we're sort of planning the next, how we're going to keep evolving, to be honest. And my role is to give a view from outside of that dressing room.
And you inferred there that obviously the results do matter, and we all know that. It's professional sports, results matter, and it matters for players as well. I know Stokes and McCullum, and they're highly driven and very competitive, and they won't like losing either. But you are bottom of the World Test Championship right now.
Yeah, we are, and again, it's not something you focus on. Do you know what I mean? This is the point. You don't focus on the end result. When you walk out to bat, you don't focus on the 100, you focus on that next ball coming, it's just take the next step. Don't worry about the step, 20 runs down the ladder or whatever it is. Just take the next step. What is it you've got to do next? We've got the bigger picture stuff and all of that. And of course, you want to win, and you hate losing, but it's not something you focus on, because then you're sort of, the mentality you have is very fragile. I think you've got to have belief and faith in what you're doing as a player and as a team, and you keep going. And it's never like this. It's sort of like that all the time, and you hope you keep momentum going to go that way. It's going to be a tough summer. It's not going to be easy, and there's more expectancy on us now and stuff like that. But you don't focus on that. You think, okay, what do we need to do to become a better team? And that's what you focus on. Remember when I started, and that's sort of, so I remember you doing one of these, you saying, you got to win. It's like, all right, yeah, that's it. No high performance review. That's it. We got to win. It's simple. Every manager in the world, every leader in sport, just go, right, guys, the big plan today, win. It's like, oh, thanks for that. Yeah, all right, it's that easy. But you know what I mean?
Can I just suggest, after last year, you've still got to win, by the way. So, the reset that's going on, you said you're going to have a little reset. I'm fascinated because it looks like it's been a bit of a closed shop to certain types of cricketer for the last couple of years. If you're a batter that grinds out a score, you're not particularly looked at. You mentioned there, you went to the Oval and saw two good players in your terminology, Sibley and Burns. I throw in Alex Lees in there. Are those batters that could get in your England side if you're willing to grind out a score? If you're a dobber at 80 mile an hour who gives you control, like a Tim Bresnan, England side, that England 2010-11 side got to that by building up pressure and joining the dots and bowling maidens. That's another way of getting wickets. So is the reset going to be we're going to go harder, or is the reset going to be, hold on, there are cricketers that do it differently that we may want to reintroduce into this side?
No, like it's not going to be a complete overhaul of a style, like our batting has been excellent, like the way they played in that Ashes series was outstanding, like that opening partnership, has been as good an opening partnership we've had, I would say, since Strauss and Cook, and the same thing with these guys, like they've been performing, like it's not about the tactic, it's like just about can you score runs against the best bowlers in the world? That's it. That's all we want. It doesn't matter how you do it necessarily. Can you score runs that help us win a game against the best team, the best bowlers in the world? Can you put the best bowlers under pressure? Because if all you can do is soak up pressure against the best bowlers in the world, I'm sorry, that's not the type of player we want. You have to be able to do both, which is what there's never really been a player that couldn't do that. Do you know, like who's been successful at international cricket level? If you're going to go out there and block it for 50 balls and not get any runs and average 25 or something, well, probably not, no. But if you, on your day, you can put people under pressure and you can score, then of course, you can come into that side. But they're the two things that you've got to be able to do. It's very simple. They've got a very simple mantra, really. And that's the judgment that we have on people. And the same thing, like, it's a mindset thing. You just got to look to take wickets with the ball, which was Shane Warne's thing. Like Warne was like, I don't mind if you have every man on the boundary, but you might have one slip and you're trying to hit the top of off. How are you trying to get them out? And then you can go to by creating pressure and all of this stuff, and that's the key. If Tim Bresnan's happy with being called an 80 mile an hour dobber, I'd be surprised. Like Tim Bresnan was a bloody good cricketer, and is not. I'm talking about the. Like this sort of 75 mile an hour, keeper up, dobbing it on a length. That doesn't work in Test cricket, wherever you are, Nas. Like it's proven anywhere around the world. What do the best teams have? What have the best teams had that have dominated for a period of time, whether that's the West Indies in the 80s, England for a tiny window with that Palmerston side and stuff. So, yeah, I don't know. Like one day you'll get it.
We've looked back a little bit. Your next big thing is the World T20, the T20 World Cup in the Caribbean. You must be delighted, first of all, to see your captain back in the runs in IPL. How do you manage your time between keeping an eye on your kind of one-day cricketers in the IPL, but also Championship cricket at the start of the year here?
Yeah, and there's a lot of franchise cricket, so we've got a fair sort of talent ID network, people who are constantly updating on how people are going. One of the hardest things with T20, sort of like talent ID and the selection process with that, is actually like there's such a different standard between the leagues. So someone doing really well in one league and someone doing really well in another, how do you value that, and how do you value... So you're looking at how does someone do it when they're playing against international bowlers as opposed to domestic bowlers, stuff like that, really. So we sort of try and keep a real eye on that. The white ball team, I sort of look at teams in three phases almost. Like, you have a time when there's lots of optimism, when you're setting out the vision and the way you want to play, and you're sort of on the way up. Then you have a period where and this is in all sport, you're sustaining success. Where you're a really good team, as the white ball team had been, probably up to 21 when we won the last World T20. And then you have a time when actually you're just you're on the downward curve and you're trying to get these players back to what they once were. And the trick is, and that's like you sort of feel like that's always going to end badly. And the trick is sort of either being in the first two phases, either sustaining success or you're building that vision. And that's where we need to balance out, I think, some of the the younger guys, the Will Jacks, the people like that, Phil Salt coming into it, adding a bit of life to a few, and it's not about all young, it's about having a balance. So that's sort of where we're seeing the T20 World Cup. And that's good fun, like you see, it's not that hard, so how do you balance it? Well, just sitting around watching cricket and seeing what's going on. It's, there's worse things to be doing.
Fast bowling's been a big thing for you in all your public comments. You do the odd podcast, the odd interview, and it seems to me that that's a real focus at the moment. So just talk to us about, you've got the Ashes in 2 winters' time. You want to get a cohort of fast bowlers together. Jofra Archer, for one, where is he at? How intricately are you planning his return to cricket?
Yeah, Jofra, because when you look at what's the best type of bowler, it's someone with decent pace, doesn't have to be 95 or something, decent pace, high skill, really accurate, and Jofra sort of fits all of those, doesn't he? And effortlessly as well, so he's someone that you invest a lot of hope in and time. And he's had a tough couple of years, Jofra. There's no doubt about that. So now we've gone the long road rather than trying to get him back. And you think because there's an argument at times that T20 cricket's taxing on these bowlers because they go flat out for 4 overs. I also believe you've got to find a robustness for younger bowlers in 4-day cricket, like John Turner. I was saying to him, the answer for you, mate, is get into 4-day cricket, develop some robustness, and that will take care of everything else. Gus Atkinson, people like that, the same. But Jofra, he went out with Sussex on their pre-season camp to India, spoke to Farb, he said he was brilliant. We have our S&Cs and physios monitoring him all the time. He's gone back because, it's been a tough year mentally for Jofra as well. So he's popped back to the Caribbean where he's playing a bit of club cricket, stuff like that, just keep him going. And then he'll come back, and the plan is that sort of Pakistan series, then into World T20. Then it's a white ball time, summer and year for Jofra, with the plan hopefully then for India and that with the Test series. But I think the one thing that you have to be is flexible with him, because what you want, and I always say to Jofra, is what a month extra now, being cautious or whatever, will seem like nothing if you're back playing fully in a year or two's time. Everyone's desperate to get back, but it's just make sure we're ready to get you going. Because, and that's the view, last year, it constantly changes because, they come back, they start bowling. This is what happened in the World Cup. We thought he might be able to get ready for the start of it, wasn't. Then he was going to come out, then started bowling, and it's no. And it's, that's hard on him more than anything else because, it's the hope that kills you sometimes.
And are you optimistic that with the Ashes in 18 months' time that you're going to have a cohort of, England's great issue, and this goes back to where we started the conversation around the Kookaburra ball, has obviously been taking wickets in Australia and winning games there. We've hardly won any Test matches since Strauss's team went down there. Are you optimistic that you'll have a cohort of wicket-taking bowlers by the time you get there? People like Turner and Atkinson, who've not yet, we can all see the promise, but you've not yet managed to get a bit of game time into them and a bit of Test match experience, which you'll need to do before then.
Yeah, exactly right. And yeah, I am, because I think we've got the talent, and that's the key. And it doesn't always get, and what we do, what county cricket does and what we require is slightly different. So it doesn't always get the opportunity. Like Josh Tongue averaged 60 in county cricket last year, and I think he looks like an absolutely world-class Test match bowler, all format bowler, because we're also going to have these guys doing well for us in white ball cricket, which is another challenge because the schedule is really tricky. How you get them, literally series in Pakistan, a couple of days later, a series in the West Indies of white ball cricket. But I think we've got, we've got the people. You talk about optimism, we've got so many bowlers that have the potential. And I'm optimistic that, these guys can come through along with Mark Wood and whoever it is that, and it's not just about the Ashes. It's about, we're going into a new era with our bowling. All of our bowlers are either really young or quite old. So, like all things, it's going to be a new era at some point of fast bowling. And that's, it's pretty obvious what you need for international cricket around the world, for us to dominate wherever we are.
How do you balance that short-term thinking and long-term thinking, Rob? Because let's focus on the test match side. You need to start winning test matches again. You've got someone like Jimmy Anderson there, who with a Duke's ball in England is going to be highly skillful, but you do have to think to the future as well and introducing some of these names. So are you thinking just win the game in front of you? Or are you thinking we do need to eventually change this bowling attack and introduce new blood? How do you balance those two different things?
Yeah, but I think that in this case, we're not picking guys because we think they're not going to be any good, it's the one thing, you don't want all young bowlers as such. You need that bit of experience around. You've got Chris Wokes as well, who, was a player of the Ashes, who in these conditions is very good. And then you've got to then get these younger guys in there to give them experience. And that's the key. And if you focus on, and it's about having an attack of sort of a variable attack that has lots of all bases covered almost, and you want those guys. You have the real high pace, but generally the best bowlers operate around that 84, 85 plus mark. And that's what we're looking at. And if you're under that, just be highly skillful, as Jimmy Anderson is still, that's the key to it. The slower you are, the more skill you have to have. That's the bottom line, and there's plenty of bowlers that have had that skill. That's what you need.
We've been going almost 50 minutes, so we must let you go. You're a busy man. You're in the middle of assessments, or what do they call them these days? They're not
appraisals.
They're appraisals.
Appraisals.
Used to have appraisals in our day. You just used to get dropped.
But I think there's an argument with the appraisal system, and this will get sort of used as a soundbite everywhere. The last few days, it's made me think we only need to give out 2 contracts.
Final question from me. You moved away from the commentary box. You've been in this role now for a couple of years, and I saw some comments the other day about you enjoy change, you enjoy learning new skills, you've enjoyed the move, into a very different career. In this 2-year period, just on a very general perspective, what are the things that you've learned about management and in this role? If you kind of pick 2 or 3 key lessons for life, if you know what I mean, about the move into management from you, what would they be?
You learn so many things, don't you? But I think leadership is a very similar thing. So I've learned loads about processes and all of this stuff. So if we discount the sort of physical side of it, but the thing that always sort of strikes me, whether you're a cricket captain, there's so many transferable skills in leadership. Leadership's I believe, is about making those around you sort of thrive and rise and do really, and really be able to succeed. And it's exactly the same, if you just got to be a great talent scout. If you get really good people around you, your job's a lot easier. If you don't do that, it's hard. Yet a lot of leaders, I think, end up just trying to employ,
less people to make themselves look good.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Because they're less. They might come and take my. It's never been any. It's the same thing as you want. If you're a captain, what do you want? Great bowlers. If you're a leader of this, you got to have. You got to have great people around you, and you got to. As long as you sort of got a view and a vision of what you want to do, and you can sell the story, then you can get people along with you, really. And I think, that just becomes even more evident when you move into this side of things, even the corporate side of it. Whether you're a CEO, whatever you are, you need good people around you. You need to just give them that direction and then let them go. And there's so many transferable things, I think. It's a fascinating world a lot of the time. I also think that everything's become so formal. And when you have even things, this is a podcast, but Zoom calls and meetings and everything online, everything's become so formal. And actually, and it won't always be the case, things need to become more informal, because then it just creates a chance where people talk and ideas happen much better, I think. I'm getting on my high horse. Like I could come forever about it. It's like how I hate the formality of corporate life, But anyway.
Well, thank you as ever for joining us. It's been fascinating. We wish you well. Obviously, you're about halfway through your project, really, aren't you? I mean, I think you and Brendan are contracted through to the end of the Ashes. Would I be right in that? And you're virtually, in Test match terms, you're about halfway now, aren't you? Halfway through that 4-year mark.
Yeah, we're all slightly different. I'm not on like a fixed term contract, as it were. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. But I never really think too far ahead. You just if you think you're enjoying it. I think that's the main thing. Like these sort of jobs, and you just keep going with it. It's a rewarding job when it goes well.
Yeah, well, we wish you well, and clearly hope that a good World Cup in the Caribbean and a successful Test match summer. Thanks a lot. I'm Hall of Fame evening here, Nasser in Manchester tonight. I'm being inducted into Lancashire's Hall of Fame. Can you believe that?
Scraping the bottom of the barrel there. Jeez.
Be a short evening.
So great. We'll see you in the summer, Rob. And Nas, I'll catch up with you next week sometime, no doubt.